In Venezuela, a group of repatriated migrants arrived at the Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía in the state of La Guaira, Venezuela, as part of the Return to the Homeland plan. In Myanmar, the United Nations estimates that around 20 million people were affected in various ways by the last Friday's 7.7 magnitude earthquake. And in Palestine, Hamas has accepted a new ceasefire proposal presented by Egypt and Qatar, according to a senior official from the Islamic Resistance Movement of Palestine. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with news. In Venezuela, a group of repatriated migrants arrived at the Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía in the state of La Guaira, Venezuela, as part of the Return to the Homeland plan. This time they arrived in an American aircraft as there were slight changes in logistics and procedure originating in the United States. The plane with the repatriated migrants landed on Venezuelan soil, complying with all the international protocols. Venezuelan Minister of Interior Relations, Justice and Peace, Captain Diosdado Cabello, said the plane was bringing about 175 repatriated migrants from the United States after having been subjected to mistreatment and accused of belonging to the Tren de Aragua gang.
Of all the 1,300 Venezuelan migrants that have been repatriated so far, this is the first time that out of 175, one has a criminal case opened here in Venezuela, but none of them are linked to the Tren de Aragua gang. Out of the 175, 11 women. Again, let me clarify, this flight has been scheduled for 9 a.m. But due issues over there in the United States, it is at this time of the afternoon that it is arriving. It had been announced that would be 229 people, but there are only 175 people on this flight. Last time I said, as constructive criticism, it seems that there is a bit of a mess in the United States on this issue, but we take this very seriously.
In Venezuela, during the 25th ALBA TCP Political Council, participants rejected the constant aggressions of the United States government against the missions of Cuban doctors and Petrocaribe. During the event, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Iván Gil rejected the aggressions promoted by the Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, against the cooperation of Cuban doctors and the Petrocaribe initiative, both of which have been beneficial for the development of the region. Gil also urged to progress in the strategic lines identified by the leaders who participated in the last presidential summit held on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the founding of the organization. For his part, the Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez rejected the increasing unilateral coercive measures of Washington against the Caribbean island and several countries of the region. In this context, on Saturday, President Nicolás Maduro held a meeting with foreign affairs ministers of the ALBA TCP member states in the framework of the 25th Political Council of the Nations that form this Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of the Americas People's Trade Treaty. During his remarks, President Maduro highlighted the historic fight of Latin America against the imperialist pretensions of the U.S., and he affirmed the alliance's will to keep strengthening the regional integration and multilateralism for the future. The head of state also rejected the economic aggressions of the United States government against Cuba, Venezuela and Nicaragua, as well as the situation of the Venezuelan migrants kidnapped in El Salvador.
They were going with a program, but the government of the United States prefers to raise the false campaign against Venezuela that this was a programmed invasion of criminals to the United States, a lie that no one in the United States believes.
De delincuentes hacia los Estados Unidos. Mentira que no se cree nadie en Estados Unidos, ni los que la dicen.
Not even those who say it, because the economic migrants that went to the United States were stimulated by them, by the coyotes. They were placed in the main cities of the United States by the coyotes, and the great absolute majority are people who dedicated themselves to work for themselves and their families. Now,
Mayoría absoluta son gente que se dedicaba a trabajar para ellos.
they want to justify with a big lie the aggressions they are making against Venezuela.
Quieren justificar con una gran mentira.
The Venezuelan president also rejected the human trafficking networks perpetrated by the representatives of the extreme right wing.
Como que fueran delincuentes.
They are treated as if they were criminals. I've been told that many of them left neighborhoods here in Caracas. They paid the coyotes $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 depending on the rate.
Depende de la tarifa, embajador.
Ambassador, I know of a case of a boy here in Petar, right here, who paid $5,000 and they took him to Atlanta in 5 weeks. He was in Atlanta, from his neighborhood all the way to Darien.
De su barrio hasta allá. Todo el camino.
The famous Darien and up. At the border, they received him. He signed a credible fear and went on.
Firmaba el miedo creíble.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Thousands of Brazilians took to the streets in cities across Brazil today to protest an attempt by far-right members of Congress to grant amnesty to former President Jair Bolsonaro. Correspondent Raya Mir has more.
In Brazil today, thousands of people have come out to the streets of 11 big cities across the country to yell no amnesty, to protest against a movement that's building in Brazil's far right to try and push an amendment through Congress that, if passed, would grant amnesty to former President Jair Bolsonaro, the 32 of his accomplices that were indicted with him for trying to trigger a military coup in 2023, and the hundreds of Capitol rioters, many of whom are still in jail for stealing weapons and classified documents and destruction of property on January 8th, 2023, during the invasion of the Supreme Court, Capitol, and Presidential Palace in Brasilia. Now, it doesn't look like there's enough momentum to pass yet. A huge amnesty protest that was promised in Rio de Janeiro, hosted by Jair Bolsonaro, had pledged to bring over 1 million people to the streets. Estimates say that was really only about 18,000 people who come out. But nevertheless, with the President of Congress in Asia, with President Lula right now, some people are worried that the far right is going to try and pass some kind of initiative, and that's why everyone's out on the streets today yelling no amnesty.
In Myanmar, the United Nations estimates that around 20 million people were affected in various ways by last Friday's 7.7 magnitude earthquake. The United Nations coordinator in Myanmar, Marco Luigi Corsi, said that at least a third of the population is suffering the consequences of the powerful tremor. The damage documented by the United Nations includes 1,690 houses, 670 monasteries, 60 schools, and 3 large bridges. In addition to the destroyed buildings, there have been cracks in universities, hospitals, and roads, leaving these places unsafe and forcing the evacuation of millions of people to open spaces or to some shelters. Faced with the damage caused by last Friday's earthquake, the Myanmar authorities declared a state of emergency in the regions of Sanghain, Mandalay, Magway, Shan, Naypyidaw, and Bago. In Thailand, the death toll from the 7.9 magnitude earthquake that hit Myanmar this Friday, March 28th, increased to 17. The earthquake left 32 people injured and 83 missing, while the affected area is being evaluated with a decreasing probability of aftershocks. So far, the Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation has recorded damage in 18 provinces of the country, 420 homes, 76 hospitals, 8 buildings, 23 schools, and 18 government offices. National agencies are providing relief to facilitate assistance and rescue efforts. In Colombia, authorities report 44 emergencies in Bogotá after heavy rains. The fire department reported 17 damages to the sewage system, 10 fallen trees, 4 damages to aqueducts, 2 traffic accidents, and a gas leak. The report detailed that the Santa Clara Hospital suffered flooding inside the facility, reason why some patients had to be transferred to other health institutions. Authorities announced that the District Institute for Risk Management and Climate Change activated the emergency plan to deal with the flooding. In other news, in Russia, authorities have confirmed that the army eliminated at least 170 Ukrainian fighters and mercenaries over the last few hours. The Russian Defense Ministry announced success of the special operation of the Center Group in completing the liberation of the Zaporozhye town in the Donetsk region. The town bears the same name as the neighboring province and city of Zaporozhye, where progress in the operation was reported as well. According to the Russian Defense report, during the attacks they intercepted US-made guided bombs and about 78 drones. The rise of fascism is becoming a worldwide phenomenon. In Germany, an international congress is debating local responses to this phenomenon. Details with our special envoy, Junior Suner, from Berlin.
The Rosa Luxemburg Foundation invited representatives from 20 countries to discuss the rise of fascism, which has different faces in different countries.
Fascism has always been very present through threats, death, repression, control of people's lives, manipulation, corruption, have always been part of their practices.
Fares Jaju is mayor of the municipality of Recoleta in Santiago de Chile. He emphasizes the legal and proprietary dimension.
In our commune, this has translated into legal warfare, persecution by the right wing, persecution by real estate projects that were outside the norm, outside the law, and that because we have regulated them, we have had a very sharp judicial persecution, and somehow they seek to criminalize the action of the municipality.
Ayala Ferreira also emphasizes property, but in a different way. She is an agrarian reform activist.
The large landowners defend the thinking of the extreme right. There are also people who exploit resources, natural goods. Then, those who do the dismantling, those who practice illegal mining in indigenous or peasant territories. Then for me, the extreme right are these people who do damage to nature, and also to the people who live in the countryside.
Of Turkish origin, Ferhat Kokak worked in local politics in Berlin until he was elected to the German federal parliament in February. He reports acts of violence by fascists who also targeted him and his resistance.
We organized extensively with churches, trade unions, but also with social democrats, Greens, and left-wing parties. Above all, what we did in the election campaign was to go on a house-to-house tour, talk to people, discuss with them their social problems, and then find solutions and mobilize them. Because every conversation is an act of anti-fascist resistance in times of hatred and resignation.
With the aim of supporting the local community economically and socially, the Chilean mayor and the Brazilian activists say.
And so we have been advancing in a series of services, which are services at a fair price for the community, of easy access, which are universal policies that do not discriminate if you have a social registry.
This is an example for those who live in the countryside, the production of healthy food, then agroecology as part of our practice of food production. We have to offer these diverse, healthy foods to people at a cost, at a fair price, especially for those who have low income.
Local politicians and activists exchange their experiences and practices in order to establish more links in the global anti-fascist struggle.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fan a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Hamas has accepted a new ceasefire proposal presented by Egypt and Qatar, according to a senior official from the Islamic Resistance Movement of Palestine. Khalil al-Hajja, deputy political chief of Hamas, announced the acceptance on Saturday, calling on Israel not to obstruct the agreement. Al-Hajja emphasized that the weapons of the resistance are a red line and that Palestinian fighters would continue to bear arms as long as Israel maintains its claims over regional territories. The proposal includes the establishment of a unity government in Gaza composed of independent Palestinian figures, a 50-day ceasefire, and the release of 5 living Israeli prisoners by Hamas, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office confirmed receipt of the proposal and stated it is under evaluation. Hamas warned that continued Israeli attacks could result in prisoners returning in coffins. This Sunday, Palestinians celebrated the Eid al-Fitr prayer at the Al-Aqsa Mosque amidst access restrictions imposed by Israel. The Ministry of Religious Affairs said that the number of worshippers exceeded 120,000, most of them coming from the West Bank and other nearby areas. According to reports, the Israeli army deployed its military and set up checkpoints at the entrance to the city to prevent Palestinians from accessing the religious compound. Despite attempts by the occupation, Jerusalem registered a large influx of worshippers who joined in a prayer for Gaza. Also in Saudi Arabia, believers joined the Eid al-Fitr prayer celebration on Sunday. Thousands of religious faithful took part in the pilgrimage to the Great Mosque in Mecca to part in the religious event. Likewise, Muslims at the Prophet's Mosque in Medina joined the celebration, marking the end of the holy month of Ramadan. Meanwhile, in Kenya, thousands of religious people flocked to the shores of the Indian Ocean to celebrate the end of the holy month of Ramadan. The Muslim faithful in Kenya joined the prayers for the Palestinian people and prayed for peace in the Gaza Strip. The celebration for the end of Ramadan is greeted by the faithful with joy, and celebrations are held including visits to relatives. In Portugal, thousands of Muslims celebrate the Eid al-Fitr, also called the Festival for the End of Ramadan, in the center of Lisbon. The event takes place when the new moon marks the end of the sacred fasting cycle and the beginning of a new Islamic lunar month. This celebration also marks a moment of unity, solidarity, and generosity for the Muslim community around the world. For Muslims, the Eid al-Fitr festival represents joy, a moment of reflection and gratitude following a month of sacrifice and devotion where their faith is renewed.
This month, the entire Muslim world fasts for 30 days. After those 30 days, we celebrate together, openly. That is why, here, the Muslims of Portugal, we started this open prayer back in 2011 and will continue to do so.
Sudan joined the Eid al-Fitr holiday on Sunday after the army came close to regaining full control of Khartoum state. Sudanese faithful greeted the end of the month of fasting and expressed their joy over the army's recent victories. Likewise, worshippers declared the greatness of Allah and joyed in prayers with their relatives. During the holiday, the faithful visit religious temples and visit their relatives as a sign of joy for Islam.
I am happy, very happy, because thank God, the Sudanese army is going from victory to victory. The most joyful thing is that people will start returning to their homes, towns and villages.
Last Eid was very gloomy, but this Eid, thank God, we feel that victory is coming to all of Sudan, and God willing, we have hope.
This year, Eid came exceptionally, especially after 2 years of war and after the liberation of Khartoum. Thank God. We have all been suffering the displacement issue in Khartoum state, for we are not in our main homes.
In Portugal, a chocolate festival has offered a taste of the so-called Dubai chocolate to hundreds of visitors. The chocolate is believed to have been originally created by a Middle Eastern startup. The treat has become a viral sensation due to its unique crunchy experience, and demand has increased after internet influencers posted videos on Instagram and TikTok showing them opening the tablets and chewing them voraciously or cooking homemade versions. In this context, the Dubai chocolate phenomenon has reached Portugal in recent months, with tablets selling out on the shelves within hours, while retailers have been trying to meet demand, but many shoppers are no longer managing to find them. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.